Welcome to the Stories We Must Tell. I'm Dr. Christina Kishimoto, and I am so excited that for this April edition, we have another amazing superintendent leader. Listen in as I speak with Superintendent Heather Tow-Yick of the Issaquah School District in the great state of Washington. I am so excited to have you with us, Heather. You are the superintendent of Issaquah School District in the state of Washington, a place where we both live. So, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kishimoto. I'm very happy to be here.
Thanks, Heather. And please call me Christina. We are neighbors in the state of Washington.
Fantastic.
Although I'd love for our listeners to learn more about where Issaquah School District is and
Yeah,
a little bit about the name of the school district.
of course. Well, I appreciate this opportunity, Christina, and we are neighbors, although Washington State is quite large. The Issaquah School District is basically located just east of Seattle and located really in what's called the Puget Sound region of Washington State. We're known for our outdoorsy community. We have scenic beauty and vistas from the mountains in the background and the backdrop to the lake. And Lake Sammamish, and we also are sometimes referred to as the Issaquah Alps. And so that is a very beautiful setting to be able to be a part of. We're 110 square miles, although we are punctuated by 3 different mountains, which makes getting to and from across the district in that 110-mile square foot area quite difficult because we have to go around mountains. And sometimes we have different climates and geoclimates at the different parts of our community. The word Issaquah roughly comes from, roughly translates to the sound of birds or snake, and that's in reference to our Coast Salish people and specifically our Snoqualmie and Indian and Duwamish tribes. But settlers came here from Europe and as part of America westward expansion in the 19th centuries. But this area has seen significantly high growth over the past 20 years, specifically due to the local tech economy, which is also national in nature. Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Meta, T-Mobile, Apple, and then also Boeing. And then specifically Costco is headquartered here in Issaquah. So this has both, grown our community in terms of the number of residents and therefore the number of students. But it's also, shifted the community dynamics quite a bit. And our community is very diverse. We not only serve Issaquah, parts of Sammamish, Renton, Newcastle, Preston, and parts of Bellevue, but we also have some aspects of our community that are unincorporated in East King County. And we have about 19,000 students, with 40% of those students identifying as white and 35% identifying as Asian American Pacific Islander, 10% as Hispanic or Latino, and more than 10% identifying as multiracial and that includes our African American and Black students. So it is quite diverse as well. A couple other things you should just know as I set the stage for some facts is we have about 1.3 billion in assets overall that we're insured for. We have 33 sites, which has 27 schools and learning facilities. And we do have a very high graduation rate in 4 years. And so we're really proud of that. But we're also expanding access to students with disabilities and receiving specialized services, as well as students that have languages other than English in their household as their primary language, as well as seeing increased need in terms of economic backgrounds for the students that do live in our community. So we are shifting our demographics, and we're really proud of the work we're doing to also make those shifts to adapt and learn, but also increase our ability to serve those students and their families.
So a lot of shifting demographics, not just in that region, but just across the nation, we certainly know. And what a beautiful part of the state to live in and to be a leader in. And other than the fact that it is a beautiful part of the state, and I love being in that area as I drive through and enjoy the scenery you described, why do you choose to serve there?
Yeah, well, it's important to know your why and your what and your where, and all of those matter quite a bit. For me, the why is pretty straightforward, which is that I have committed my whole life to pursuing both excellence, but also providing access and opportunity to students and to families that have not had the same as others based on a variety of different background factors, whether it's economic status or ethnic or racial background. And so that for me started as a classroom teacher, teaching middle school English and US history in the South Bronx, where I saw firsthand the manifestation of history and how the Bronx became its own part of the sort of New York City five boroughs, but then also what happened when the Bronx Expressway was created. And so that carved up the city and created very specific structural and industrial barriers to access and opportunity, and shifted the community and their access to services. So for me, that's been a core part of who I am and why. The what is because I learned over time that I had skill sets that could increase and benefit individuals at scale. And for me, it was also about being able to work through systems, culture, routines, and setting a vision and direction for people and using leverage of high performing teams and leadership development to be able to better serve students. So for me, it's not been getting away from what I love doing, which was teaching, but actually thinking about my skill set and how I could better serve many more students with in terms of both excellence and access and opportunity. And the where is because I came out here with my husband. He retired from the military in 2015 and had a job out here. So it took me a bit of time to follow him essentially, but we made a pact that we would, enjoy our life out here and somewhere with us finding new professional pursuits. And for me, Issaquah not only matched my focus on the values of excellence and access and opportunity, but also it was a demographic that represented my ethnic and racial background, more so than in other communities. So with 35% of the community represented by Asian American Pacific Islanders, I saw myself in that number where I had not seen myself growing up as a student in multiple educational settings and at multiple levels, nor as a classroom teacher, nor in the other communities that I've served, at scale. So for me, it was about also matching not only the values of the district, but also the community demographics.
Yeah, I love that story of connection. Thank you for sharing that. We know that at this time of year, states are having their legislative sessions and superintendents are thinking about their policy issues. And, we're talking in the state of Washington about everything from shifting demographics to dropping enrollment to transportation costs, to special education matters and so forth. But we have this national kind of agenda that we've been faced with as a new administration has come in, and lots of fast moving changes and a very politicized system and situation that we're in. And so I'm wondering how just the politics of today, the conversations about closing the US DOE, the very recent, this week conversations about eliminating all of the staff at the federal level focus on English language learner services. There's just been so many moving parts and very, very swift moving. And so how does that impact you in terms of how you have had to spend your time leading in this policy space as you're focused on the local, but impacted by the federal decisions?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a timely question about what's happening on a federal landscape, but how that then pairs with the local landscape.
Mm.
And so for me, the environment of politics and policy is just the given. We always have to learn how to adapt and work under and with. And so if you know your values for why you do, what you're doing, and where you're doing it, you can maintain your direction and your goals focus on what is best for students in your community. And how you approach doing that will change. How you leverage resources, both in terms of actual financial resources as well as human resources, will have to adapt. And there's multiple ways to get to a goal. I was a college athlete and I competed in a water sport called sailing. And you always knew what the destination was, but because of the way the wind direction would change, you would have to adjust your course and your pathway and constantly adjust your boat settings and your sails. And so for me, it's very analogous that as leaders, we have to stay agile as to the how, but maintain hyper focused on the what. And that's our goals and where we're going. And that's supported by our values and what our community needs. So I will maintain that in the face of any headwind, of any shifting winds and at all times. Here in the state, we are very active in working with our legislators on telling them about our needs. There have been rising costs for insurance, which does impact our material supplies and operating costs. We are playing defensive to bills that might be, hard for us to implement based on other state laws or based on the needs of our community. And so we are also looking to receive more funding for increasing the amount of allocation that comes to school districts for students with special services. And then all of that combined helps us move other resources around to better serve our students who are multilingual learners or who have other needs that we need to attend to, whether it's acceleration in learning or whether it's intervention support and scaffolds to get kids up to speed. On a national level, we're just taking that in like everybody else and looking at what that might mean. And so it does mean we have to tighten our belt, right? We have to think about what our resources, what we do have, what comes from federal funding, and also be really, really clear about how we use our resources, what the trade-offs are. When I started this role and on my interview day, so this is day one for me, I call it, I talked about when asked the question of how would you handle our budget in a declining enrollment and sort of fiscally tough environment, I said, we got to always think about what we're starting, what we're stopping, and what we're either continuing or building upon. And so I call that just my philosophy, and that is just expense management. You're constantly pulling different levers to be able to get to the right budget to support the goals that you have and meet the needs of your community.
And so, as you're having these conversations with not only your board, but your staff, your community about the policy issues that really matter at the local level within this context of just what's happening federally, you have also the students to think about and how they're interpreting and receiving and experiencing what's happening federally. When we're talking about issues like immigration issues and kids fearing that when they get home, a parent or family member may not be there, or we're talking about affordability with school lunch and conversations happening around whether that should continue to be funded or shifted to states, and those cost matters when we're talking about English language learner services or what can be taught, what can be said, what terminology means. Our students are listening and we hear them reflecting and making comments. We have a national program called the Girls Policy Network. And so we get to hear our students talk about policy issues and how they're receiving it. I'm wondering in your district, what is that conversation? What are you hearing? What is it that you're thinking about in your leadership as a superintendent in terms of how you allow for that voice and agency of students in light of these big policy matters that they see as impacting them?
Well, student voice is so important for any decision maker in a system, because in an education system, because our students are the ones that experience the day-to-day life of the education system itself in their classrooms and their activities, and so forth. So for me, the student voice aspect is so critical. I also say that, there's a global kind of message that I want to make sure is always very clear is that every single student in our district is welcome and will be affirmed for who they are. And that goes also and extends to their family members as well as to our staff. And so, but I focus on our students first because they're the primary person in our system to focus on. And so I do at every single moment in time, whether it's in adult spaces or schools or with students directly, just want to affirm that we will do our work, which is to ensure that each student feels like they belong and is affirmed for who they are as unique individuals. And that's important to note. And we do that in combination with our ecosystem of partners who also provide more specific services as needed to further affirm as well as support those unique identity markers that our students bring and have as part of who they are and who their family is. But when it comes to student voice, there are several ways that I've been really grateful to have the opportunity to work with students. The first is through our associated student bodies, where we have student leaders come and they talk to me about what they're seeing, what they're thinking. And this most recent event that I got to meet with about 15 of the student leaders across all of our high schools, they were asking about what do we do with this federal government? What do we do to protect, our identities? And they were very thoughtful. And I said, listen, the number one thing is we're here to do our job, which is to work with you to make sure you are doing well, that you're thriving, and that you're learning, and that you're able to graduate from our school system and go on to pursue the life of your dreams. And then that's something we will also, if something comes up, we will work to partner on how those challenges might be overcome or how we might, leverage unique opportunities that do exist. The other way that I get to work with students and get to hear from them is through the student representatives to the school board. And this was a policy that was enacted actually um, as I was coming into the superintendency in 2022. The school board had really great foresight and intention in building a student representative program to the board and actually had 2 representatives allocated to each high school. So we had four high schools, and now we will have 8 student representatives as part of their program. And year one was bumpy. We were learning how to support students, and the board was thinking about how they were making room for their voice and how they were engaging with them and how they were mentoring them. And then that also meant how we as a district were supporting them and the board together. And so that was the first year. We learned a lot. They actually asked students to revise the policy, and students did. And so they said, this is my experience. We want more mentorship from the board. We want to be clear about where we're weighing in. We want support on how to maybe administer surveys or to get student feedback about certain topics. And we want to be really clear about what the expectations are for attendance and participation. So those were all things we could do. And so we modified that in my second year, and it really went quite well. And actually, it was during that year, the students also said, hey, we want to do an advisory vote. So we upped the game again, and they worked to give a proposal to the board. They worked with my team to make sure it was, you know what I mean, operationally, logistically supported by the different means we would do that. We wanted to protect them in their voting process so they could not become unfairly, targeted for any vote that they did do. So we had a very clear process because they're not public figures, right? So we wanted to make sure we protected their privacy. So we took all that into account, and it was pretty amazing. And they started the student advisory vote this past fall. So in my third year, and so that's pretty exciting. And recently, we went with 4 of our student representatives to Olympia and they were the ones that led on talking to our elected officials that represent our district about increasing funding for special services, about increasing funding for material supplies and operating costs, and about changing some other laws that have to do with how bonds are voted on, like what the threshold is to be approved by a local community, as well as some other bills that were coming up. So it was pretty amazing to see how incredible, although not surprising, our students were in their grasp of the policy issues, the need that exists, and the willingness to be coached both by school board members as well as our staff.
I love that. That's just so powerful. What a great example of how it had just become more and more sophisticated each year, and that student agency has just become deepened in the school system. In the Hawaii school system, where I most recently led, there's the oldest statewide student leadership advisory system. So I had the benefit of walking into a very sophisticated design, and it was just so powerful. I learned so much from the students, and every time I had policy to take before the board for their consideration, it went to the students first, and they turned it back to me. And sometimes it looked different, and I love that. It just pushed our thinking in terms of bringing that student voice. That appreciation that you have for student agency and voice in the policy work takes a whole team. It's not just the superintendent. I'm wondering if you could just speak a little bit about the role of preparing teachers to support student agency and voice in terms of how the system works in this collaborative and cohesive manner to advance policy agendas that are really student-centered.
Yeah. Well, I would say that we have some amazing teachers at our high schools who serve as the sort of point of contact or teacher for the associated student bodies, or ASB as we refer to them. And those are the leadership positions within the school. They actually manage their own funding model, and they follow the rules and regulations of the state in accordance with the law. And so what they do is they help our students lead and they say, what are you going to focus on? And they oftentimes have passion projects that allow students to explore what they're passionate about that benefits the whole school community. They talk about culture, they talk about school spirit, and they really have these set of trainings that go along with their roles and responsibilities as a governing body within their school. So our teachers are already leading the way with, you know, partnering with students to ensure that they are good stewards of their school. And when they see something, they can have a real role in identifying what the needs are, understanding those root causes, and then coming up with solutions to help improve the experience of their peers, right, in their school building. So that has been happening for quite some time, and our teachers who are the ASB advisor are doing a tremendous job in helping to accelerate that leadership experience. And when I talk to alumni, and it's not just with ASB as an elected body leader within your school building, it's all of the activities and athletics that actually are cited often, in addition to strong coursework and great teachers, as one of the most differentiating kind of factors that allows our students to pursue other things and to take on other leadership roles in their post-secondary world, whether it's career or a 2 or 4 year institution. So I think these opportunities are so important for our young people to be able to take on leadership roles within their peer group and supported by caring and very intentional and skilled adults.
So, Superintendent, as you think about the rest of this year and how you manage and balance between what are still some of the federal unknowns and what you have articulated as some of the state issues that you are managing, but also your vision for how you're continuing to engage your staff and your students in this with this vision of academic success for all students. What are your thoughts around what you need in order to continue to be successful to manage during these complex times?
Oh, wow. I need a lot, but I also know the number one thing that is that fuels my soul, but also fuels, great team performance and leadership and outcomes for students is talent. And so what I really need is, people to know that their contributions matter, that they can always get better, and that we will, while facing different headwinds, as I talked about, or changing winds, can navigate that, and we can do it together. And we have to continue to build on our team. And one of the things I said when I came into the organization with my colleagues who are administrators across the district, I said we are only stronger when we're together. And so stronger together really is an important mantra, and how we both guide our work, deliver our work, implement our work, reflect on our work. And so talent is really my primary answer. I'm focusing on that, and I want people to know that that's a core ingredient, if not the only ingredient, to making hard decisions and to take things to the next level despite challenges.
Well, Superintendent Heather Tow-Yick from Issaquah School District, we really appreciate having you. At some point, you and I just need to chat about our South Bronx days and share those stories and do our talk story around that. I wish you the best in the school year and certainly continue to connect with us as a network of powerful school superintendents who are just leading in the most amazing ways, but also recognizing these are difficult times. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Christina. I'm very grateful to be here with you today. I'm grateful to be leading in Issaquah School District, and we have so much great work we can accomplish still, despite all the things that are happening, the busyness of life as well as the landscape.
Thank you.
Thank you.